all these different black lingerie. Well, yeah, lingeries, but I wanted to wear one that wasn't lingerie. Like that's for another place. But I thought this one was like all fashion, even though I was posing there before the show. I'm gonna put some boots on, but I wanted to show you in case the boots go too high that these are pants. I am wearing pants. I actually had other boots and I held them up and they would go like up to here and I'm like, no, let's see if we get uh shorter ones. How are you guys doing today? Actually like didn't have a great day. Like I was gonna go. Oh, I did go to the grocery store and to the CVS, which is nearby. Um, then I, like, ran over a curb. Didn't hurt anyone, but it did something in my car, like, and I was gonna go to the box after, but I didn't because of that, and everything's fine. But I think you know what? I have to like lately. I think my anxiety is making it worse. I always have like anxiety about things, but like I think that I should have got like a pumpkin spice latte, but like I didn't treat myself to one. See how high these are gonna go. Because I was trying to like save money because I was like already like getting her too many treats at the grocery store. So I'm like, no, I'll just go home. But I was hungry at that point, and I'm thinking, let this be a lesson to you, or to eat before you go for like a drive like this one. Like, but you see the difference in the finishes. It was kind of nice. Um, So if I got a pumpkin spice latte with the milk, with the little sugar, I probably would have been better for me. Like, give me something in my stomach, give me something, or even get like something to eat, something you could grab at the grocery store, something. Even the Starbucks they have there was like a with those little pumpkin loaf or something. Because I came home and I ate. I had well, when you go to the grocery store and we have like clearances, so I had like fruits. And, like, and I have, like, those pre-made bowls of the tropical fruits with, like, mangoes and kiwis. Um, and what else did I have? Oh, they had mango salsa on sale. So I had some mango salsa. I ate, like, when I came home, and she did too. But it's like, I should have then instead of telling myself, like, I would only deserve to eat, like, after I made it home. No. So next time I have to keep that in mind too, because you need that for you kind of run on whatever you put in, and if you put nothing in, meow. Also, I was up late watching that Wednesday season 2 part 2. I didn't finish it yet. I made it to like 2 because I also watched that Alien Earth. I was like, oh wait, Alien Earth is on tonight too. So I put that on. And so by that when I was waiting to midnight, I was waiting to midnight because Wednesday premiered on Wednesday, but it was midnight my time. So mhm. um So by the time it was midnight and then I watched the 3, it got to be really late, and so I probably didn't even get enough sleep by the time I woke up. I woke up and my phone was buzzing and it's stressing me out and I have just so much shit. So that wasn't really set up to have a good day, but whenever am I? So um my day was hard, so I've been looking forward to this part where it will be nice. We pick up, it's the beginning of a new section and then a new chapter in that. Um Where we ended last night, we found out what happened to Evelyn, who literally died in a fire. And who saw that coming? Who saw that coming? My phone's getting stuck. Me. Well, maybe some of you guys also, but also definitely me. Okay. Just pulling you guys up. Yeah. Oh no, I gotta post a new one. Sorry. Did I not do that right? I think the section we start on tonight is Elizabeth. I think the total first line is the first paying job that Elizabeth ever had was the job given to her by Dr. Otto Sandburn her first year in college. Okay. Well, I mean, Elizabeth as a character, as Terry says, really. Um, she comes from the privilege where her basic responsibility was to engage in intimate and revealing conversations with random guys to see which of those guys fell in love with her. None. The academic paper that eventually emerged from this research, entitled dryly The Empirical Construction of Relational Intimacy, a Practical Methodology, was received with much mirth in the mainstream press, and Sandburn was interviewed on a daytime talk show. Okay, Oprah, where his work was given a much more scintillating name. It was, they said, the Love at First Sight script. Mm. What Sanborn had done was to rigorously test various combinations of roughly 100 probing questions to settle upon the 10 key questions that, when answered in a very specific order, could unlock affection and even love between two otherwise total strangers. Thus, Elizabeth's job to go to the psychology department every weekday during the that first autumn in college and 3 or 4 times per day be fallen in love with. I don't believe that. I really don't believe anyone fell in love with her from this. I really don't believe that. The men she interviewed were all volunteers, all college age, heterosexual, single, who, on their intake forms, expressed a strong interest in dating. Her conversations with them began with a simple set of instructions that she, pretending to be a test subject herself, would read aloud, informing her partner that she was going to ask a series of questions of a personal nature. And it was very important that they both answer these questions thoroughly and honestly, after which she'd begin the interview. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much did your parents love you? This was the question that, according to Sanborn's research, most effectively lubricated the rest of the conversation, asking subjects to assess how they had been fundamentally cared for in the past made them more open to the possibility of a new and even better love in the present. This was why the question was presented as a scale. because it's well known in psychology that when asked to describe anything about themselves on a scale of 1 to 10, people almost never choose 1 or 10. So even subjects with the most happy and loving childhoods would probably pick 9, which implied that there was still room for improvement, which was the purpose of the question, to get them thinking about how they could be more fully and satisfyingly loved right now. Plus, it was Sanborn's theory that when subjects described their childhoods, they were, during the time they assessed and recalled and chronicled those memories, also reliving the memories and sort of inhabiting the child they used to be. There was, after all, a certain module in the brain that did not meaningfully distinguish between the experience of a thing in the present and the memory of that thing in the past. It was the same process that, for example, was often overpowering and uninhibited in people suffering from PTSD, who could not remember a traumatic moment without feeling they were reliving that moment. And so when a subject was talking about how he was loved as a child, there was a part of his mind that had to become that child in order to accurately describe it. He had to simulate and recreate that child's consci- consciousness within his adult mind, which primed him to feel in this moment with Elizabeth exactly as that child felt in the past, needy and vulnerable. All people have within them, sometimes close to the surface, sometimes buried way deep down, the ghost of that child, defenseless child still haunting them. And Sanborn's first prompt was meant to summon it. Oh, give me a friggin' break. Then why didn't she say that to all the random men she wanted to be with at that swinging party? Because then they all would have apparently fallen in love with her. Real true love, apparently. That's how that works. I can tell you, Elizabeth has asked this question twice in the book now, and I hate her more every time. Are you in love with her? Thank you, Jerry. Hey, Eve. Elizabeth. Okay. Mm. This was then reinforced via the second prompt. Describe the first object you ever loved, in which the guys recounted memories of some kind of security blanket thing, or teddy bear, or toy, or doll, or, for those guys who seemed to have seriously impressive early life recall skills, a baby's little trinket like a rattle or a pacifier, usually with some kind of primitive name, e.g., Binky. Elizabeth was charmed by the several men who had basically the same memory of a thin knitted cotton blanket of a pastel blue color with satin edging that would eventually fray at the corner exactly at the spot they habitually, as children, supped on. It was important that these cherished objects were thoroughly described rather than merely named, as describing their physical characteristics require the interviewers to assess information stored in the sensory cortex involving textures and smells and tastes and such, which again had the effect of subtly and subconsciously manifesting that blanket in the present, briefly reanimating the person they were when they were wrapped up in that blanket. feeling all safe and warm. In other words, these first two questions were designed to drill under people's adult defenses and expose their more innocent and vulnerable and unprotected previous tiny little selves, after which it was time to make them squirm. Or, as Sanborn put it, make them experience high effect. After priming his subjects to feel vulnerable, he'd next take advantage of that vulnerability by inducing powerful and often distressing emotions. Thus, the next several questions were fashioned to trigger feelings of anxiety and embarrassment and shame and even dread. Questions asking subjects to describe moments where they were laughed at in public, moments they cried in front of other people, moments when they were most nervous or afraid. Elizabeth asked her partners to predict how they might die or what they would regret if they died today. She asked them to describe in clear and specific and terrifying detail exactly what they found most physically beautiful about her. What? Oh, God. The purpose of these questions was really just to get the guys' hearts racing, to get them sweating and nervous. Yeah, and I'm sure it didn't work. First of all, you have them think about some blanket that smells like baby vomit and what they felt like when they were sitting in their own diapers. I mean, none of this makes any sense. Sanborn was trying to create in their bodies vaguely the same sensations that happen when people actually fell in love. The sweat, the nerves, the racing heart, taking advantage of a particular psychological phenomenon whereby people tended to misattribute what was causing them to feel aroused. As Sanborn explained it, the thing people understood as a feeling or emotion was only a conceptual and semantic category they associated with a suite of physical impressions. When they felt all hot and tight and trembling and clenched, they had learned somewhere along the way to call that anger. Or when they felt fatigued and hollow and listless, they called that sadness. Thus, there was a basic chicken and egg problem with the human experience of emotions, a problem of causality. What it felt like subjectively in the head was that strong emotions cause strong physical reactions in the body. One feels anxious, and that anxiety triggers sweaty palms. But in reality, it was the other way around. Palms began sweating, and then the mind retroactively searches for a cause. I must be anxious, it decides. Dear God, you don't know anything about anything you're talking about. Anxiety, love. What are, and I'll be honest, I don't even believe her about the whole shit with the airlines. That people knew they were getting a shitty deal. I'm sure that they knew that you didn't trick them into thinking that they were happy. Emotions, Sanborn said, were simply names that people gave ex post facto to biological events. That is not true. And thus, it was possible, and sometimes pretty common, that these names were imprecise or confused or downright incorrect. Toddlers, for example, oh God. If the house started shaking right now and there's like a fucking cat 8 earthquake, okay? I'm not gonna go, I think I think I have anxiety because See, because my palms are sweaty. I don't think I've ever had sweaty palms. Is that and I have severe anxiety, but anyway. Um, no. Excuse me, bitch. You're having a major earthquake. That's freaky. It's not, oh, I must just be feeling my palms. No. Sometimes horrible things happen and I get anxious. Um, Loving someone, I would think feeling that they genuinely care about me. Um, that I see them, their a genuineness at least towards me. Um, that's they don't feel that she cares about them because she's asking them off a list questions and then saying, describe why I'm beautiful. That's ugh, ugh. It was widely known that people experienced much more romantic arousal and attraction in contexts that made them feel nervous or anxious or afraid. Seeing studies done. All right, guys, I want you to feel romantic arousal, so I'm going to pull a fucking gun out right now on you. You listen to me. Sorry. Are you not in love? Sorry. Mm, mm, uh, See studies done about the incredible effectiveness of first dates spent at amusement parks or watching scary movies, or as in one brilliant Canadian study, talking to a potential love interest in the middle of a wobbly suspension bridge 400 feet over a rocky ravine in a high wind. Subjects in that tiny, swaying, alarmingly rickety bridge, it was right outside Vancouver, experienced the full complement of physical responses to high effect. The adrenaline, sweaty palms, racing heart, solar plexus, feeling sense of panic, and doom, their minds had two ways of explaining it. Either they were feeling this way because of the bridge, in which case what they were feeling was fear, or they were feeling this way because of the other person with them on the bridge, in which case it was attraction or even love. And because feeling attraction was less ego bruising than feeling fear, that's generally the story they trusted and believed. Couples who met on the suspension bridge were far more attracted to each other and had more follow up dates than a control group of couples who met on a sturdy, large, low laying, and for the most part, boring Canadian bridge. In other words, people created a story that explained themselves to themselves, and then they believed their made up story was the actual objective truth. Thus, if Elizabeth could get her partners feeling nervous via highly intimate and revealing questions, the guys might misattribute these nerves, telling themselves essentially, I must be really attracted to this girl if I'm feeling so nervous around her. Hence the interview's final question: do you believe in love at first sight? This question was a blunt instrument. Oh, God. The psychological equivalent of a magician's force, where you assume you're picking a card freely from a deck of cards, but you're really selecting exactly the card the magician is pushing upon you. asking a subject if he believed in love at first sight at exactly the moment he was buzzing with the physical manifestations of extremely high effect was practically gift wrapping a version of reality for him to latch onto. After which, the guy was given two things. First, the thematic apperception test to measure for possible romantic and sexual arousal. And second, Elizabeth's home phone number, since the percentage of test subjects who called to ask her out was a revealing datum to collect and record for scientific purposes. It was this script that Elizabeth helped to perfect, and it was this script that she had used on Jack the night they met. This was a fact that in all the years they were dating and later married, she never once revealed to him. She was, she thought, sparing him upsetting knowledge. Jack was such a colossal romantic, and he treasured the purity and magic of their origin story so much that she didn't want to poison his memory of it by revealing that he'd actually been the target of advanced psychological manipulation. She didn't want him to know that the excitement and rush he felt that night was, at least partially, lab tested and peer reviewed. It worried her at first to have finagled with his emotions like that. But then she discovered that he'd been watching her from afar through the window just as she'd been watching him, and that he'd had a big crush on her before they even met, which seemed exculpatory. And then eventually, after months and years went by, it all ceased to really matter. They'd been a couple for so long that whatever false tactics she'd used at their courtship's very beginning were outweighed by all their true and legitimately happy time together, right? This was the question on her mind the day she met with Dr. Sanborn. She found him sitting on his favorite bench, looking at his favorite Chicago landmark, a sculpture that was known affectionately around town as the Bean. Actually, its proper name was Cloudgate, and apparently the artist was pretty persnickety about that people please call it Cloudgate, and whenever the city referred to it in any official capacity, it was always called Cloudgate, but everyone else called it the Bean because that's what it looked like. This sculpture, it was 60 feet long and 30 feet tall and covered in reflective polished steel, and its shape was, one could not deny it, leguminous. It was a colossal three-dimensional mirror in the exact oblong shape of a lima bean. It sat in a plaza downtown, reflecting on one side all the buildings of Michigan Avenue, whose flat faces seemed to curve and curl on the bean's seamless skin. What Sanborn liked most about this landmark was watching people watching their own strange images upon it, how their heads looked distended or squished, and then moving a little this way or that way. Now their bodies were distended, uh, um, or squished. Over here, they were shaped like a pumpkin. Over there, they were shaped like a pear. Hundreds of people were now doing this, standing around the bean or under it, waving at themselves, taking pictures, moving this way and that way, watching the corresponding deformations, which they found delightful, which Sanborn found delightful. He sat on one of the nearby benches and watched them, smiling. Elizabeth had asked for this meeting. She had kept it in close touch with Sanborn in the years since he retired, but she'd had enough contacts to know that retirement did not entirely suit him. He did not have the constitution for leisure or idleness, and so the assorted new hobbies and social mixers and exotic travel available to him now felt disappointing. They lacked the qualities of his working life, the sense of high intellectual purpose derived from pursuing one of life's greatest questions. How do we know what's true? Compared to a question like that, who cares about Acapulco? Is what he had written Elizabeth in an email sent a few years back from Acapulco. Okay, and this dumb motherfucker doesn't even know what retirement means, doesn't even know if he wants to be retired when he retires while he's in Acapulco. And you're supposed to believe that he knows for a fact that people fell in love with her because, wait for it, they called her phone number? I'm sorry, what? I don't even care if they went out on a date and actually told her they loved her. I still wouldn't even believe that they meant it. But this guy's like, oh, you can take that right to the bank. That's a true fact. This guy doesn't know anything. Elizabeth doesn't know anything. And if this was real, I would have this place. I would want to have this place shut down. I would. You know what? Daryl's in Illinois. Joe, your nation is Illinois. I would have you guys protest. Sanborn was dressed in his usual outdoorsy flair. His many pocketed hiking shirt, lightly mottled with sweat, a broad-rimmed green bucket hat protecting his pink face from the sun, cargo pants velcroed at the ankles so that his pant cuffs didn't catch on the chain of his bicycle, which was how he got anywhere in the city still. The bike leaned against the back of the bench, heavily freighted from what must have been an afternoon trek to the grocery store. A handlebar box filled with 6 packs of cola, a stuffed saddlebag, a big double basket in back, from which sprouted the handles of many plastic sacks, twirling in the wind. Sanborn sat enjoying the spectacle of the fiend until he saw Elizabeth emerge from the crowd. Then he stood up, kissed her on the cheek, said, "My dear, what a lovely surprise to hear from you. Please sit." She joined him on the bench, and together they watched a group of children laugh extravagantly at the way the bean rendered their faces all elongated and flattened or otherwise grotesque. These kids' parents, meanwhile, mostly stood around looking at their phones. Why are funhouse mirrors fun for some people? Sanborn said, but not as much fun for others. I don't know, Elizabeth said, but I'll bet you have a theory, a working theory, criminally untested, a wild guess. It would probably be irresponsible to even say it out loud. Okay, well, what my hunch is this. Everyone feels, to some extent, large or small, that there is a part of themselves that is deeply weird, yes? An inner freak, a part of themselves that is at odds with what we all agree is, quote unquote, normal. Sure, agreed. And some people have a good relationship with this inner weirdo. They cherish it, humor it, let it occasionally surface, revel in it. These are the people delighted by the funhouse mirror. They see this monstrous version of themselves in the mirror and think, yes, that's also me. They accept it. Oh, God. Oh, my God. This, take the guy's keys away. He needs, like, what is wrong with you? I don't know. I think some people probably get like dizzy from like the weird upsy downsy of the stupid ass mirrors, but also I don't think they're seeing their true self. Oh, why do some people like putting on a fucking Snapchat filter with like their head swarming in bees or looking like Elvis Presley? Oh, because inside they know that they're weird. I doesn't mean that that's who they are inside, swarming with bees or whatever. Like these kids here, Elizabeth said, watching the children now making outrageous faces into the bean, sticking out their tongues, crossing their eyes, doing that thing with their mouths where they fish hook themselves with their own fingers and pulled. Among us all, it's children who feel the most at odds with social norms and etiquette, Sanborn said. So it stands to reason that they are most in touch with their inner weirdos. But adults, not as much. Oh, I don't know. You seem like a weirdo staring at a bunch of kids, to be honest. Get a job. But adults, not so much. Some adults spend considerable mental resources being normal, fitting in, performing a facade that is pleasing and publicly acceptable. These adults experience their inner weirdo as alarming and threatening, full of unwanted urges. They work very hard to silence or bury. For them, the funhouse mirror is not fun. They feel challenged by what they see there, the image of someone as ghastly and unpresentable as they feel they really are on the inside. Take this guy. Sanborn pointed at a nearby businessman, perhaps on his lunch break, a navy sport coat, blue shirt, apricot tie, a little backpack flung over one shoulder, now making his way through the plaza, then stopping at the outskirts of the crowd, staring into the bean for a moment, exhibiting perfect posture, then quickly moving on. That man, Sanborn said, oh boy, that man has secrets. This sounds like a promising research subject. Oh, it's only a theory, my dear. I have no earthly idea how I would test it. And anyway, I'm much too busy right now. Are you working again? I am indeed. I couldn't bear retirement 1 second longer. All that free time, all that golf. No, I am back at it, currently doing an ethnographic study on a fascinating community of people who all share the same odd conviction. Which is it? They believe that the world is a computer simulation. A simulation, like in that movie with the robots? Yes, but not so apocalyptic. The people I'm studying are shockingly logical about it, really quite rational and mathematical and analytical. They begin with a simple premise that computer processing speed and power will likely continue to advance at their current exponential pace well into the future. Sounds reasonable so far. It follows then that humanity will eventually someday invent computers of basically infinite capacity, yes? Computers so fast and powerful and intelligent that they are able to simulate the real world down to its last atom, a map of the world as big as the world. Computers with the ability to simulate the feeling of living a human life as a human being, to simulate all of Earth's history, altering variables here and there to see what changes, to test how outcomes vary, like a weather model on a cosmic scale. This type of simulation is more or less inevitable. Yeah, okay, and we still can't even cure a cold. But okay. Okay. Flying cars. Okay. I understand. So, in that future, how many of these world simulations might be run, do you suppose? I don't know. A million? Yes, indeed, a million. In which case, the universe reasonably contains one real Earth and 1 million simulated Earths. Thus, it follows, logically, that the chance we are right now living on that single real earth is literally 1 in a million. It's a probabilities argument in the end. The odds are just far better that we're in one of the simulations. Dear God. This is the type of person that would kill themselves if their chatbot told them to. They're like, oh, we're in a simulation, so it doesn't really you just come right back. Okay. Jeez. Nonsense. Especially given that anyone in the simulation would not perceive it as a simulation because that would ruin the simulation. Kind of brilliant, yes? Are there many people who believe this? There are so many people, and they have big, boisterous communities online. I'm embedded in a group on Second Life, a platform that is itself also a simulation. Do you know what they call their group on Second Life? No? Third Life. Oh, how I miss these chats of ours. How is everything? How is your family? Elizabeth smiled. She knew the answer to that question was in tatters. Jack was off in Kansas. Their marriage was crumbling. Her future and their dwindling nest egg were snared in internet controversy. But feeling suddenly guilty about burdening the poor man with all her drama, she said, fine, nodding with great vigor, everything's fine. My dear, he said, you did not contact me out of the blue because everything is fine. What's troubling you? Elizabeth let out a breath she did not realize she was holding. It's about me and Jack. Yes, we're not doing well. I see. We are having marital problems. Recent or ongoing? Probably both, but I guess it started with the new condo. I haven't told you, we finally bought a condo. Congratulations. Yeah, it was supposed to be our forever home. And I think that maybe the whole process of building our forever home just surfaced some things that, frankly, we hadn't been dealing with. Like, it made us wonder if this is really how we want to spend our lives forever. It made us see that maybe there is something fundamentally, I don't know, mistaken between us. And what is that? It might sound odd, but do you remember when you hired me? Of course. Do you remember the research we were doing at the time? The love at first sight research script is, I believe, what they called it. Engineering intimacy in laboratory settings. I'll have you know that our results have proved to be robust and replicable. Unlike so many other results these days, that was very good science. Yeah, I sort of used it on Jack. You did not. On our first date, I did the entire script, all 10 questions, in exactly the correct order. Why, you devil. Ever since then, Jack has been convinced we're fated. Oh, but I wish this would have happened in the lab. We could have included it in our data. Imagine the headline results so strong that side effects include marriage. It's just that I'm pretty sure Jack and I, we're quite, we're actually quite wrong for each other. Is that so? Remember when you told me when you and I first met your definition of love? You said love is when you see something in someone else and you want it for yourself. And I saw things in Jack that I thought I wanted at the time, but maybe I don't want them anymore. Or maybe they were never there in the first place. I don't know. My dear, Sanborn said, looking at her now in the same patient way he looked at her when she was a student and said something naive. You and Jack, of course you're not fated. Of course you're wrong for each other. Wow, Elizabeth said. I actually thought you might try to make me feel better. I will try to make you feel better, my dear, but probably not in the manner you're expecting. Okay, of course, I'm terribly biased right now. You should know that on the subject of love, I probably cannot be trusted to speak objectively. Why is that? I've met someone. You have? Someone, and I cringe to hear myself put it this way, someone special. Oh, good for you. His name is Dale. If you can believe that, imagine to be so unsentimental my entire life, only now to be smitten and undone by a Dale. It's frankly embarrassing. Frankly, 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 I'm happy you've met someone, Elizabeth said. It was the first time Sanborn had ever told her anything specific about his romantic life. He'd always been, for decades, either completely silent on the matter or poignantly vague. She smiled at him and took his hand and squeezed it. And I bet she believed all this time he was in love with her. Yes, well, Dale, Sanborn said, and shook his head. He has awful taste in wine and food and film. He sincerely laughs at the dumbest sitcoms. He's never heard of Chopin, but knows all the rules of football. He makes this sound when he's chewing that is moist and terrible, and yet I can't get enough of him. I've been told that it's called new relationship energy. My point is that he's made me reconsider my former intractable positions on the matter of love. Sanborn grinned at her and then leaned back, crossed his legs, looked up into the crisp autumn sky. Elizabeth followed his gaze and saw, way above him, several pigeons sitting atop the beam. The way the sculpture mirrored the bright blue day, it was difficult to see where the beam ended and the heavens began. And so it looked like these pigeons were up there levitating. There's been a question nagging at me ever since our acupuncture study, Sanborn said. Do you remember our acupuncture study? That was the one where people cured themselves of chronic back pain via toothpick? Yes. And ever since then, I've been thinking about this question. If people are capable of that kind of self healing, why don't they just do it by themselves? Why do they need the placebo? Why do they wait for permission? Why do they need the trigger? I didn't have an answer back then, but I believe I have an answer now, though again, it is untested. So take everything I'm about to say with your normal, healthy skepticism. I certainly will. Okay, so the body can sometimes cure itself of pain, but often opts not to. I believe this implies that occasionally it's good to feel bad. There must be some advantage to feeling bad. Take that, guys. So I got that going for me. There must be some advantage to some purpose to the pain, yes? I suppose that pain is a kind of warning system. If you pull a muscle in your back, the pain tells you to rest your back so you don't injure it worse. And that's definitely true for acute injury. Torn muscles, broken bones. Thank you, Jerry. Mm. Lacerations, bruises, but as you and I well know, Placebo has very little effect on this kind of damage. There's not a single placebo that can heal bone or mend tissue. No, placebo works best on people who are suffering chronically, back pain that no x ray can explain, headaches with no clear organic cause, irritated bowels with no obvious irritants, generalized all over lethargy, physical lassitude, ambiguous inflammation, endless emotional anguish, spiritual hopelessness, loss of romantic love, pain with no acute physical cause, perceptual pain that the body could ease if it wanted to. This is the pain that's most responsive to placebo. And why is that? Well, I think the answer might just be boringly biological, which is that it's expensive. It's metabolically expensive. Treating pain or infection or inflammation from within is actually very costly in terms of pure calories spent. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to summon the body's immunities or endorphins or natural opioids or serotonin, etc. Did you know, for example, that the body has a much smaller immune response to the common cold in winter than it does in the summer? I did not. The brain perceives the shorter days, the lack of sunlight, the cold temperatures, and thinks this is the season of scarcity. And so it does not spend as much energy fighting colds as it does in the summer, the season of abundance. This is why colds in the winter tend to linger, because the brain is stingy about allocating resources, evolving as it did in conditions of hunger and hardship and famine and want. So, if you're starving, you don't waste calories treating a cold. And if there are hungry lions everywhere, you spend your precious energy on running, not on your irritated bowels. So the brain, which is still operating a Paleolithic simulation set atop our 21st century world, does a cost benefit analysis. It will only spend the energy needed to cure you when it is certain there is enough energy to go around, when it is certain you are safe from harm. But we are safe, obviously. No lions, no famine. Okay, but is that how it feels to us on the inside? Do you feel very certain? Do you feel very safe? If an emotion is just the name we give to bodily sensations, how would you describe an experience of certainty and safety? How would you feel deep down? I would feel calm, I guess, tranquil, peaceful, mellow, hopeful, unencumbered, free. And tell me, my dear, how often do you feel like that these days? Probably almost never. Exactly right. People are not experiencing the world with peace and tranquility. Our lives have never before been so free of immediate physical threats, and yet we've never felt so threatened. What is he talking about? First of all, the thing with the colds, you're around people in close quarters with the window shut because it's cold, okay? And so you're more likely to get it. And also, the sun's not out as much, and you're not out as much killing the viruses on things, such as the cold virus that would be, on you, on your clothes, on whatever, your hands. I mean, there are reasons for this that aren't. Oh, when your body wants to like save the calories. Listen, if you need more calories in the winter and your body tells you that, then you'll probably, I don't know, have some more calories, whatever. This guy's ridiculous. And It, I believe the opposite. Our Who says our lives have never been so free of immediate physical threats? Are you kidding me? Is this a joke? And that's because in the course of our normal everyday lives, with all the responsibilities of work and family, amid the churn of information and news and trends and spin, with the millions of choices available to us, with all the horrors of the world served up to us every second on TV and computers and phones, we mostly just feel anxious, worried, and precarious, vulnerable, basically the same emotions we would feel if there really was a famine or if we really were being hunted. Information. The irony that this guy's sitting out there in Chicago saying this. Oh, thank you, Rob. Oh, thank you for the flowers. Information overload is the new hungry lion. And isn't that the truth? We feel unsafe. We feel uncertain. And so the body gets stingy. It conserves. What placebo offers us is the illusion of certainty. It gives you a story that, once you believe it, triggers the body to finally do its own natural thing. So, placebo doesn't cure you. Rather, placebo creates the emotion required to cure yourself. And that emotion is certainty. Thank you, Terry. I can't wait to find out what this has to do with my marriage. We don't live in a world that offers much certainty, my dear. We live in a world of exponential chaos, an age where it feels like the more we know, the less we understand, where it's fashionable to ascribe secret, unconscious motives to all behaviors, and thus you doubt that even your deepest thoughts and feelings are actually your own. Maybe the way you think and feel is true and honest, or maybe it was just hardwired into you by evolution or programmed into you by growing up in a patriarchy or socialized into you by living in your particular racial caste or implanted in you by the many ways your parents screwed you up. Or maybe it's because you've been seduced by propaganda or nudged by algorithms. Or maybe you're unconsciously virtue signaling to your tribe. Or maybe you were born with a particular brain with its particular chemical idiosyncrasies. Or maybe all of these things at the same time. How would you know? We suspect there's something large looking below, unseen, and so we're always searching for the even deeper entendre, like your computer simulation people. I think it's obvious that we do not live in a computer simulation, but choosing to believe that we do live in a computer simulation is a useful metaphor. It gives a name to our gnawing intuition that there's something else governing us, that we're not entirely in control, that we have no idea what the fuck is going on. It creates certainty out of uncertainty. Have you seen those photographs people take of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, where it looks like they're holding up the tower with their bare hand? Sure, That illusion only works when you're standing exactly in the right spot to observe it. If you move one step left or right, the illusion falls apart. And I think people do this all the time in life. Oh, thank you, Terry. Nobody falls for the illusion. What are you nobody believes that they're actually holding up the tower. What are you talking about? Oh, buddy, buddy, you need help. In life, they find a view of the world that agrees with them, a spot that feels safe and secure, and they plant themselves in on that spot and don't move. Because if they did move, their certainty and security and safety in the world would fall apart. And that's too scary and painful to contemplate. So people prefer their illusion that the world is definitely a simulation, or that acupuncture is a thing, or that juice cleanses work, or that Ebola was created by the government. It's a little assertion of sovereignty amid the chaos. In the face of insurmountable threats and distressing precarity and pain, the body longs more than anything for certainty. You could say that certainty is, in fact, the flip side of pain. It's what pain looks like reflected off the funhouse mirror. When I see people on Facebook express their loud, inflexible certainty about some political thing, what I believe they're actually saying is, I am in great pain and nobody is paying attention. This is also true for people who believe deeply in soulmates. Like, say your husband, what Jack really needs is the illusion of certainty and the illusion that he will never be hurt again. But why is it an illusion? Isn't love sometimes real? Aren't there at least some married people who are actually perfectly right for each other? Is Jack right for you? Is Jack wrong for you? Well, that depends. Who is this Jack we're talking about? Who is this you? What version? At what time? In what place? Oh God. Which of your many funny reflections is the accurate one? Yesterday, you were this person. Today, you're that person. And tomorrow, who knows? But marriage promises consistency, certainty. You will be loved forever. And the moment we become certain of this is the moment it begins to slip away from us. Our certainty binds us to how the world changes and changes and changes. So if nothing is real, if certainty is just an illusion, what do we do? Believe in nothing? Believe what you believe, my dear, but believe gently, believe compassionately, believe with curiosity, believe with humility, and don't trust the arrogance of certainty. I mean, my goodness, Elizabeth, if you want the gods to really laugh at you, then by all means call it your forever home. Oh, God. Okay. Next chapter. Thank God. Notice how this man has all these, like, oh, why do people believe this or that? Well, let me tell you, they could be, you know, in pain, and the world can be too scary. And there have you considered mental illness, my friend? You say that you spend your days on Facebook and you don't like, and these are all real people, I'm sure. They're real people with, what did he call it? Um, that that are saying I'm hurt. They're definitely not bots. They're real, and they're definitely not mentally ill. Um, and Elizabeth, you're taking marriage advice from a guy who's never been married. never held a relationship. A guy you didn't even know was like apparently gay for Dale. I that whole chapter has made me even further believe that not only is Elizabeth dumb, but her being as her mentor is delusional. She's take a dumb person and then wildly mislead them for their entire life, and this is what you get. Okay. Elizabeth stood in her parents' room in her brand new dress, waiting. This was up on the third floor. Oh, thank you, Jerry. Mm. In the grandest bedroom the Gables had to offer, the one with the big stone fireplace, a four-poster bed, polished wooden furniture, at least a century old. Her father was at his full-length mirror, looking at Elizabeth via her her reflection in the glass. Her mother, meanwhile, sat at one of her two vanities in a black dress, a cashmere shawl draped over her shoulders, deciding on jewelry. Downstairs, the caterers were preparing the house. Up here, Elizabeth was waiting for her outfit to be approved. Her father did this each time they entertained guests, necessary because Elizabeth needed to learn how to present herself appropriately. And she was, he said, regularly unable to do this. So she waited for her father's verdict. And as she waited, she watched her mother pick up a pair of antique pearl earrings, raise them to her ears, examine herself in the mirror, then put the earrings back. On the vanity before her were 10 other kinds of antique pearl earrings. Raise them to her ears. Oh, yeah. Plus all the gold and silver hoop earrings. Oh, thank you, Wink. I love a hoop earring. Uh, the diamond stud earrings, the dangly earrings with exotic, colorful gemstones, not to mention the many shiny bracelets and bangles and slim wrist watches, all antique, plus the necklaces. There was another vanity for the necklaces. Elizabeth's mother fancied herself another a collector, or that's how she described it anyway. This stockpile of jewelry and the rooms of Queen Anne furniture, the gallery downstairs of early American art, the garage of classic cars, the boxes of designer wrist watches, the textiles of handmade origins, they were all collections, she said, a word Elizabeth never really reflected on until this summer's research project. These recent philosophical investigations into the subject of economic self interest and the invisible hand, when Elizabeth began wondering what economic purpose these collections served. Antique pearl earrings were, of course, not intrinsically valuable, nor were they useful or beneficial. in any obvious utilitarian way. Rather, the collection was worth something only because people thought it was worth something. Elizabeth's mother would show off a collection to visitors, and these visitors would praise it with great effusion. And this seemed to bring her mother pleasure, and pleasure was, in a market economy, valuable. Thus, Elizabeth decided that what we call a collection could actually be thought of as a kind of elaborate battery. Just as a battery stores energy, a collection stores pleasure, is what she had written on her paper. And Elizabeth watched now as her mother ran her fingers over this earring, that earring, stroked this bracelet, that brooch, and Elizabeth imagined her mother tapping into the pleasure of her collection as one pulls electricity from a battery slowly until it runs out, which it always does. What is she talking about? Why do people like jewelry? Because it's pretty? Because it makes an outfit look the way you desire because you're putting something together. Like, why would somebody like pearls? Because they're pretty. What can I tell you? Elizabeth truly, when they say she was in the special classes, and Elizabeth watched now as her mother ran her fingers over this earring, that earring, stroked this bracelet, that brooch. And Elizabeth imagined her mother tapping into the pleasure of her collection as one pulls electricity from a battery, slowly until it runs out, which it always does. Her mother's collection seemed, over time, to yield less and less pleasure whenever she showed them off to guests. She was seized by the subsequent need to immediately enhance and expand them, and then various excursions would inevitably follow to auctions, estate sales, boutiques in the city that one could enter only by appointment. Socrates would have something to say about that, Elizabeth thought. Socrates said that what was most important about pleasure was not the sheer amount of it, but rather its quality, its impression, its endurance, that a person who lived life needing more and more and more pleasure while simultaneously unable to hold on to the pleasure was not really a person at all, but more like a mollusk, just floating and feeding, which was something Elizabeth had not written in her paper, afraid that her mother might find the paper and read the paper and be naturally shocked and offended. Elizabeth stood there, silent, in her parents' bedroom. She watched as her mother tried on a different pair of pearl earrings. She waited for her father's wardrobe approval. He looked at Elizabeth's reflection in the mirror. Finally, he said, "Posture." Elizabeth sucked in her breath, stood up straight. "That's right," he said. "Shoulders back, tummy in. No one wants to see your belly." She pledged to stop drooping and hunching, a pledge she knew from experience she could not keep for more than a couple of hours. She always had to be reminded and cajoled into uprightness. She always unknowingly drifted back to this baseline slouch. She wondered why she did that, why her mind and her body were so consistently at odds. On this night, for example, She was able to keep her good posture at least halfway through dinner when she caught sight of her father's disapproving look and realized she was doing it again, hunching. Around the table were her father's business associates. Here, this weekend, because he was being presented with some kind of award from some organization that advocated for the disabled. This was 3 weeks after his little episode in the mall parking lot, bashing in the van's windshield. And now he was being honored for his tireless efforts on behalf of Connecticut's handicapped citizens, was what was printed on the invitations. So there would be this small dinner tonight, then frivolity tomorrow afternoon. Tennis, swimming, shuffleboard, followed by the big party tomorrow night, when he would receive this honor and a large number of VIPs would be descending upon the gables. People from the State House or people from DC, people of great political consequence. And her father was right now reciting the names of these powerful guests, slowly, reverently, to his business partners, Berkeley, Dodd, Macaulay, Glork. He said, if we get any of these folks on board, it's off to the races. His associates all smiled at him obediently, nodded at him obediently. It could almost be said that they were full body wagging. How do you do it? One of them said. The youngest one, recently out of his NBA program. I mean, handicap parking spaces. How did you ever think of that? Her father grinned. There are opportunities everywhere. Amazing, truly amazing. The key is to never be satisfied. Well, that sounds like Hamilton. Her father said, crossing his arms, leaning back in his chair, never rest on your laurels. Never feel content. If you ever start thinking, I've done enough, I'm good enough, you're finished. Yesterday's successes don't matter. Forget them. All that matters is the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. Take my daughter here. Elizabeth's eyes flicked up at him. She'd been staring into her lap, detaching her attention as he commenced his orientation, and she suddenly became aware that she was slouching again. So she sat up powerfully straight. My daughter, he continued, isn't satisfied taking the same classes everyone else is taking. So she isn't satisfied doing what everyone else in her high school is doing. No, she's taking college courses as a freshman. Isn't that right? And then all eyes were on her, and her first impulse was to correct him. She wasn't taking college courses, but rather college prep courses, which were very different. But then she saw the look her father was giving her. A look like, don't mess this up. And so she batted away that impulse, nodded, and listed the many advanced courses she'd be taking this fall, after which she began name dropping the various philosophers, Hobbes, Plato, Adam Smith, she'd been reading this summer in preparation. And she kept going on about all her summer research until she caught her mother's eye and was seized by another opposite mandate, which was don't brag. This was one of her mother's primary rules of manner and etiquette. Don't brag, don't gloat. At the very least, don't appear to be bragging or gloating. She'd seen her mother so many times flaunt her collections of expensive things. And seemed to get right up to the edge of what might be considered bragging, and then defuse it by saying something self deprecating and modest. Oh, it's nothing special, just a little trinket. I almost certainly paid too much for it. It's probably not even authentic, said about a very pricey piece of jewelry Elizabeth knew for a fact had been rigorously authenticated. And so Elizabeth was aware that listing her academic achievements could possibly be seen as bragging or gloating, tried to similarly undercut herself. I'm also taking theater, which I'm so bad at, just no talent whatsoever. Mostly I'm taking it because this girl Maggie's in it. She's probably my best friend. We're going leaf peeping in the fall. Leaf peeping? Her father said, and Elizabeth explained how Maggie's family went up north every autumn when the colors reached their peak and drove to their favorite lookouts in the White Mountains and gazed at the trees display before heading to the same small cabin they rented every year, where they built a fire and toasted marshmallows and headed home groggy the next morning, though everyone seemed to wake up and come alive when they passed the old man of the mountain, which was this rock formation in Franconia Notch that really looked exactly like a steely jawed man in profile. And the whole car waved at the old man and said, "See you next year, Mr. Mountain." And that's leaf peeping, Elizabeth said. Sounds nice, said her dad's colleague, the young one, and Elizabeth was nodding, agreeing, even happily until she caught her father's eyes again. How very quaint, he said. Elizabeth looked into her lap. She realized she was slouching again, and she sat up straight. She couldn't do anything right. Well, at any rate, her father continued, I wouldn't count on leaf peeping. Then he flashed a smile at his business partners. If this deal goes through tomorrow night, we're off to DC. Oh, Elizabeth said, nodding. Don't worry, kiddo. You'll love DC. And there's some great schools in Virginia. Everyone was quiet for a moment, looking at her mother idly caressing one pearl earring with a fingertip. And then her father was standing up, inviting his colleagues on a tour of the house. And so everyone followed him to the portrait room. And as Elizabeth listened to him tell the familiar stories of Augustine's past and understanding came over her, she would almost certainly not be going leaf peeping with Maggie Percy after all. And furthermore, would not be seeing Maggie Percy ever again in her life, and she felt that old sensation coming back, or rather, that old, that lack of sensation. Going gray rock is what she called it after that book about Sylvester and his magic pebbles. She was fortifying, thickening, hardening, ossifying. She felt herself becoming more impervious, feeling less and less porous, feeling less feeling. It was amazing sometimes the power she had over her body's automatic functions. She found that she could slow her own heartbeat if she focused on it intensely enough. And she could make herself run a real fever if she wanted a sick day from school. And she could will herself to just not feel, in which a case in which case a kind of coldness took over, an impassiveness. And she found that for a few days or sometimes weeks afterward, the world became dull and uninteresting. And she knew she was doing it right now when she felt the people in the portrait room sort of recede from view. They just ceased to matter. And this news about a move to Virginia, she did not feel anything in particular about it. She literally had no thoughts or feelings as she and everyone else listened to her father's stories of Augustine tycoons. These men who were not afraid to step into something new and unfamiliar: railroads, real estate, textiles, precious metals, each generation going into a new industry and conquering it. Eventually, the tour moved on, and she hung back until the crowd disappeared into another room. Then she made her way back through the kitchen, the pantry. She walked the 2 floors up the staircase behind the pantry and sat holding her knees to her chest in the empty servants' quarters. Those little rooms walled off from the rest of the house, where she tried on days like this to reset, to self soothe. She could be alone and unbothered up here, where the only sound was the wind rushing at the window and the home's old walls moaning and creaking as they warmed and cooled, expanded and contracted, breathed. But soon a rustle and flutter from above alerted her to the time. It was now dark, and the horde of bats that had come to permanently roast on the home's 4th floor was now stirring, awakening. The colony had remained up there despite the best efforts of exterminators to trap them or contractors to seal them in or out. The creature somehow always managed through these interventions more or less undisturbed. The bats were small, The house was large and drafty. They would find a way. Their numbers had grown so large these past few years that stains and streaks and gross wet rippling had become visible on parts of the third floor ceiling in spots where just above sat monstrous shimmering mounds of bat droppings, the collected secretions of the whole scrum. Thick plastic sheeting had to be installed on the ceiling in these rooms to protect the inhabitants from guano-related toxins or disease. Apparently, even the air up on the fourth floor was now poisonous. Eventually, inevitably, the bats would overrun and ruin the house. But as the exterminators told them, eliminating the bats would be a kind of catch 22. It would require so much poison applied so consistently that it would render the house uninhabitable. So the situation was altogether unsustainable, and yet for now it persisted. Elizabeth listened to the sounds from above, the shiver of wings flapping and scratching of claws, chiseling into plaster. She must have fallen asleep like that, for she woke up still in that room, still in her dress, hearing her father's voice calling for her. It was time for their morning tennis match. And so Elizabeth quickly changed clothes and went into the backyard where she found that today their contest would have an audience. Everyone from last night's dinner. Here they were on the porch, and they all applauded when she arrived and joked about placing bets on the match. She walked by them, eyes down, walked onto the court without even looking at her father, and took place at the baseline, ready to return serve. The match proceeded as it usually did for the first few games. Elizabeth was a mildly capable tennis player, but not once all summer had she defeated her father, whose slicing and spinning and curving shots always confounded. He was the his was the junk baller's strategy. Mm, to win by trickiness, williness, skullduggery. A player who imparted so much wacky spin on the ball that it was impossible to get a clean strike on it. Elizabeth watched the balls floating back at her, spinning so much that they would strike the dusty court and careen in unanticipated ways, sliding into her, leaping away from her. And this was how it always went with her and her father, miserably. But this morning, suddenly, Elizabeth had a notion. After a few games of her typical losing, seemingly at once, she decided to win. She decided to follow a brand new strategy. If the problem was that her father's shots bounced in strange ways, well, she just wouldn't let them bounce. She would close the distance between herself and the ball. Oh, thank you, Jerry. Mm. She would rush to the net and not allow the ball's fierce rotation to even matter. She sprinted up there, and it was so surprisingly easy. She put the floating ball away. A hard volley cross court, a winner. Her father looked at her, surprised. The crowd cheered. She did it again, the next point, and the next. All of her shots, she battered right by him. She didn't grunt or yell or celebrate or anything. The only sound was the clean, satisfying thwack of the ball contacting the exact middle of her string bed, followed by a hearty whoop from the spectating guests. Her father's agitation began to show after 2 games of this, when Elizabeth tied the score. By the time she broke his next serve, he was complaining about lucky shots, missed line calls, flat balls, loose strings. He shattered his first racket of the day when she won the first set, smashing it hard against the court, whereupon the onlookers' enthusiasm suddenly dwindled. Yet Elizabeth continued on, feeling nothing, being a rock, mechanically putting away his slow floating shots, then watching with total dispassion as he floundered and changed his tactics. Junk ballers famously have no real plan B. First, trying to lob over her, which mostly resulted in a bunch of easy overheads. Then, attempting to smack the ball for flat and hard and angry passing shots that almost always flew out, and usually by several feet. A second racket was demolished during the changeover at 3-0, snapped across his knee. Elizabeth barely registering it, the guests now absolutely silent. The final game proceeded like the others. Elizabeth was volleying shots to this or that corner, her father scrambling, lunging, losing. On the last point of the match, Elizabeth was idly wondering why she had never before played this way. It was an obvious strategy, thinking about this even while she was playing the point. As she came to the net and picked off her father's slice and this time placed a nice little drop shot in the middle of the service box. And despite his large, galloping, and lengthy arms, Elizabeth could see that he had no chance, that he would never get that ball. And yet here he came, sprinting wildly to the net. Elizabeth still wondering, why have I never done this before? As the ball bounced twice, the point over, the match won, whereupon her father screamed, God damn it! And cocked his arm back in a sidearm motion similar to a frisbee thrower's. He hurled his racket forward, maybe at the net, as he would later claim, or maybe not. And as Elizabeth watched it come from basically point blank range, unavoidable, helicoptering right at her, she thought calmly, even mildly, oh, that's why. All right, that's the end of that chapter. We'll pick it up tomorrow on the next. We will be on page 554. Yeah, I think I should try and finish this book tomorrow. Maybe I should come on just like a little bit early, power through it so we can be done. We'll see how it goes, but I feel like we're about close to the end. Mm, what did you think of that? Ooh. Sorry, I want to make sure I was like in my top and not coming out. So I feel like if the next chapter is in order, the dad's gonna be hella pissed that she beat him at the tennis match, but we powered through a lot, got a lot of reading tonight. So let's look at the chat. What is she reading? Elizabeth? Awesome reading tonight, Stella. Thank you. Thank you, Jerry. Terry. Daryl, Rob. wish I can see her face. Elizabeth? Well, she's blonde. They didn't really talk about how she looked that much. You gotta kind of just picture it. There's not unless there was a movie of it, although I don't see how they can make a movie of this. John microphones. You could not be serious. Great as always. Thank you. Sorry, I can't read the chat super loud. I mean, I'll see when there's like a tip or like a member because it's like it is a big block more when I can't read it as much when I'm trying to read through because at first I was like commenting a lot on the ridiculousness of that professor who you were supposed to be taking seriously who doesn't know shit. um so yeah, but I want to make sure we get done with this book because we've been on it a while because it's like 600 pages. We can start our next book which will be a lot shorter. So tomorrow Thursday, uh trash night. We'll see if I make it out to the box tomorrow. But I love you so much. Sleep well. Big Brother's on tonight. No, I'm just reminding myself. Mwah. Good night.